Well, welcome everyone to our special payment podcast discussion about the changing landscape of payment methods and what that means to the healthcare industry, especially on your ROI. My name is Susan Martinez, and I'm a sales consultant for EZClaim medical billing software, and I've been personally involved in the healthcare experience, especially as it relates to medical billing, and worked in several offices in my lifetime. And I think we can all agree that payment is a focal point of medical practices much more than ever, especially today. So with that overview, I just want to bring in our guests to provide some context to this discussion. My colleague Dan Loch is joining us. He's the VP of Sales and Marketing Business Development here at EZClaim. And he has a unique background serving in the tech industry for over 20 years and 10 in the past years in healthcare experience. Dan also has a degree in systems engineering and a master's in software engineering. And that kind of education probably didn't point you in the director of healthcare 30 years ago, but because the systems they were using then focused on linear pay models, the practice to insurance. Would you agree?
I would agree. I did not expect to be anywhere near the medical industry living in the Detroit area. Everything was automotive growing up, but it's been a great move for myself. And between the engineering background and the processes, which was the key part, along with the MBA eventually that I got, was able to tie it all together.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Tony Peterson is also joining us, and he's the VP of Business Development and Customer Success for BillFlash Next Trust. Tony's entire career has spanned the medical services industry and medical practice software, so he's been seeing quite a lot of change in our healthcare industry. So Tony, welcome.
I'm here, okay. Susan. Thank you so much, and thank you for the prompt there. We appreciate the invitation to participate with you and the EZClaim team here today. As I'm sure everybody knows, EZClaim is one of the real tight and important partners that we have at Next Trust. And we are in alignment when we look at the market and see the changes that are happening to the way that claims and visits are billed in the medical industry today. I think that there's a lot of topics that we'll be able to dive into today, some of the challenges that we're going to reference, and that if we look at it from a high-level perspective, we'll notice that it's not just software and systems that we have to change out, but we're going to have to change our processes and our workflows, because the model that we're using was built for 30 years ago, and that's not how patients pay today. So I think that we've got a lot of great things that both of our companies can bring to the equation, and look forward to talking about those with everybody on the presentation today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I also want to introduce another great guest that we have with us today on our podcast is Michael Jones. And Michael is a payment service analyst at FullSteam. And FullSteam is our parent company offering credit card integration services into the EZClaim software. So Michael, I'd like to introduce you to everybody.
Yep, thanks, Susan. I'm really glad to be here to talk about how payments, and specifically integrated payments, can help customers and make their life a little easier in a time where time is limited for just about everyone. Seems every day we find something else to spend time on. And so any way we can get a little bit of that back, it's a blessing. And so I'll be glad to talk about that and a lot of payments info in a world that's not very clear.
Thank you. So one of the trending topics, of course, is all the different services out there as far as taking credit cards, taking checks, what type of payments are you and options offering to your clients and your patients, and how are you collecting that money? Are you using online services? And that seems to be the big going way because of COVID. A lot of us aren't coming into the office anymore. And is your office offering that online service? And do you have the tools in your software to be able to do that? So that's something that you really want to think about. Being able to save a credit card on file is huge with the patient, and just giving them that ability to make that payment, and increase your copays and deductibles that need to be taken from the patient. So I know it's hard in this day and age. A lot of people have lost their jobs, but you're still a business and you still need to function, and you need to think like that. That is something that the patient is responsible for.
Susan, I think you make a great point there. So one of the questions that we did ask when people were signing up for this, and I thought the data was interesting, that most practices, only a small percentage actually pay upfront before they leave the office when they're going to see a provider. And then in addition, that data also showed us, and the people that signed up, that out of the money that's owed after insurance, a few people said that over 50% of those patients never end up paying. And it was a couple of years ago, I actually had read a stat where it's 80% of the money that walks out of the door on a practice never comes back in. So it really makes you think about how practices do business. Back when I was a kid, there were no deductibles, there were no co-payments. Everything was 100% covered by insurance. And even when I started working on my own and covered my own insurance, that was just starting from a trend perspective. So practices were still collecting after the fact. But when you analyze it, it doesn't make much sense to me, because I can't walk into Best Buy, point at a TV on the wall, grab the box, and walk out the door and say, hey, I'll catch you later on a payment. They'd tackle me in no time, making sure the TV was
Right.
okay, of course. And that's how practices need to think. They need to realize they are offering a very valuable service to patients / customers that they need to get paid for. It's only fair. We pay for our gas, we pay for our food up front, we pay for the niceties that we have up front. And so practices, number one, what they need to do is change their process flow. Start collecting either right when they walk in the door for what they know they owe, even before seeing the provider, and that's the co-payment or the deductible or something along those lines. There's services out there from Trizetto and Waystar and others that can do an estimation based on what you think you're seeing the provider for that day, and based on deductibles and eligibility. Then after the fact, the provider knows what they saw them for. They know what the codes are. They can run an estimate, and collect that full amount right away from the patient. And going back to my analogy to Best Buy, what do they say to you when you walk up to the counter? How do you want to pay today? They don't say, are you going to pay today? It's how are you going to pay today? So you're changing that mindset of the staff within the practice, but also the mindset of the patient that is in the practice at that point. So you don't give them an option of if they're going to pay, it's how are you going to pay? And that leads you to different ways. And with everyone wanting to go contactless right now, with everything that's going on in the world, not just in the country, you need to start taking credit cards as a form of payment. Have a terminal sitting there, or if somebody calls in with a payment, be able to take it right in the system. And you don't want to do double entry. Why take it via swipe or via Square and then enter that data and then go back to your PM system, your billing system, and enter it again? The ideal way from an efficiency standpoint is do it once and you have less mistakes. And the EZClaim has come out with that solution finally. We offer credit card processing through FullSteam, our parent company, and we offer custom quotes, et cetera, to help keep those numbers down. Michael, I think here would be a good point where you can kind of go through the different types of ways that they can pay for credit card fees. It's a very difficult thing to actually grasp. And I've been doing a lot of learning in the last 6 to 8 months. But interchange fees, there's compliance fees, there's this fee, there's that fee. And some of it is based on how things are done. Some are hidden fees, et cetera. If you can kind of go through how a lot of those pricing models work and educate our listeners.
Yeah, that sounds great, Dan. That's exactly what I'll do. And I also want to touch on exactly what you said. I'll mirror that. Integrated processing, it just makes everyone's life easier to only have to enter stuff once into software systems and to not have to worry about double entry and errors in reporting. It's really a blessing, ease of mind, save you time, stuff like that. So in general, credit card processing, there are a few different parts. A majority of fees typically come from the card brands, Visa, Discover, MasterCard, Amex. And they have 4 different types of fees. A majority of them are interchange fees. That's a rate and per item tied to each specific credit card that's calculated at the time of transaction. So they have interchange fees and they have dues, fees, and assessments. Dues, fees, and assessments are kind of like monthly fees based on your volume from the card brands. They're commonly referred to as network fees. So that's one part of processing, or your card brand fees. The other part.
So Mike, I'm going to stop you there. Do you have any control over that, or is that all set and regardless of who your merchant services company is, gets charged the same thing?
Right. That is something that processors don't have control over. They're set at a standard Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and Amex, or a debit network. And even some cards are regulated by the government. And so those we don't have any control over. One part that is a little confusing is if you're on a flat rate, like one that Square or Stripe offers, they actually pay for them for you. However, they charge you really high rates to do that. So if you're not with one of those processors that does charge a flat rate, they do interchange plus pricing. They'll be the same regardless of the processor, unless you have a processor that gets really creative and messes with those fees in a negative way. That's the gist of it. And to touch on that a little more, the difference between pricing models, Square and Stripe, Square offers a few different flat rates. Stripe offers a common 2.9 and 30. There are a few processors out there that do that. The alternative is interchange plus pricing. And it's really overall, it's a better model. It typically saves everyone money. It's more transparent. And in this model, what happens is a merchant pays for their own card brand fees at their wholesale rate that Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and Amex set. And these card brands, they're reviewed by tons of people every day. They can't make crazy changes without, backlash and all this type of stuff. They make small ones, but nothing too crazy typically. So the reason that kind of system is more transparent than like a flat rate, even though, Square says, hey, you're paying for card present stuff, you're paying 2.6 and 10, what's more transparent than that? The way that the interchange plus rate is more transparent is your processor is not the one setting those rates and this type of thing. It's Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and Amex. And so you pay their actual wholesale rate. And on top of that, you pay your processing fees, which almost all the time stays consistent. And what that allows you to do is save money on really cheap debit cards. So a lot of merchants will get a lot of debit cards. They'll get a lot of HSA and a lot of FSA cards, and those are all classified as debit cards. And so those are a lot cheaper when they come through. So if you get one of those and you're with, say, Square, you're going to pay 2.6 and 10 on it, no matter that the rate is really only like 0.05% and 22 cents. So in that case, it's not you that saves all that money because somebody brought in a debit card, it's your processor. So an Interchange Plus quote, you'll save all that money from that debit card, the HSA card, and that FSA card, and you'll be the beneficiary of that. And of course, most medical industries get a small break on interchange. So with the Interchange Plus quote, the merchant will see that benefit. However, if you have a flat rate, your processor sees that benefit. So for medical specifically, I would really encourage everyone to try to make their way to an Interchange Plus quote.
How do I get an Interchange Plus quote, Michael?
So the way to get an Interchange Plus quote, the most common way is typically to send over statements, say, to us for review. What we do is we'll take your statements, review them, and offer you an Interchange Plus quote. And one thing I would really encourage is to send over statements for a few reasons. One, the industry is super complicated. For the life of me, they've made it so complicated. I don't know how a normal merchant is supposed to understand everything that comes over on most statements. It's really difficult. So one of the benefits sending statements is you'll get an independent review of your current pricing, and it doesn't obligate you or anything or cost you money. Some processors are really creative, and so sometimes it's really hard to figure out what you're paying. And so that's why I would encourage everyone to send over statements. You get an independent review, you'll figure out what you're really paying. And almost all the time we'll be able to meet or beat your pricing with an Interchange Plus quote. And so you'll save money on that.
Thank you, Michael. I find it interesting going back to the debit portion. I did some quick math because you and I had talked prior to this preparing for the podcast. And just some typical math, if someone paid online or a virtual terminal or something along those lines with Square, et cetera, for a $100 charge, it's almost $2 difference on that particular $100 charge that a practice can save by doing an Interchange Plus versus a flat fee.
Right. So just say, for instance, if you were with Square for their key transaction, say someone calls in and says, "Hey, I'm going to pay for this bill that I have with you," which may be rare, but it will happen. Their rate for key transactions is 3.5% and 15 cents. So you'll end up paying 3.65% for that transaction, when it only costs Square 27 cents to process that transaction. So you're going to pay $3.65. It only costs Square 27 cents.
So that's over $3. That's even a bigger savings. So from a practice standpoint, I think that's a very big point to think about. And at EZClaim, we do offer a flat rate because from a marketing perspective, a lot of people didn't want to send us their statements for whatever reason. They're afraid that we're going to have too much information, what have you. We're not going to give the best rate, but we don't have control over the interchange side. This just allows you to really understand what you're paying today, and we can show you what you're going to save by making some changes. So I think in the debit cards, HSA, FSA, more and more people are doing that. They're actually out there and trying to make those payments. And Michael, I think you told me a story as well that I thought was very interesting when it comes to the integration piece. I know the first thing I grab when someone asks me for a payment is my American Express, because that's where I get my points. And I hand over my American Express. You said that they were finding that patients were walking out the door, getting halfway to their car and say, "Oh my gosh, I meant to put that on my HSA or my FSA debit card." So they walk back into the practice. The practice then needs to void
Do a
that
void.
transaction, and then do another charge on the FSA HSA. If they're in two different systems, now they've got to change things in two different spots. So that really pushes you towards an individual system where everything's done in one spot. There's less mistakes. With
Right.
that, I do want to lead into a little bit here. Thanks with Tony on the line. Is BillFlash is a partner with EZClaim, and we send all of our customers over to them to be able to send statements, and statements aren't going away anytime soon. We realize that. And so through them, you can get your statements. We can batch them up, send them over, and they'll send out statements, whether they're paper or electronic. And then as EZClaim has been adding some services, for example, we have the credit card processing now. In a couple weeks, we will actually have a patient portal. We already added card on file this month. We have about half a dozen customers beta testing that, and that will be released from a general availability next week. But you still need to be able to send those statements to be able to process those cards. And companies like BillFlash, who are also in the payment industry, understand what's going on, and they can help you and guide you on how to set up your statement so you get your best return. Tony, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think that's a great segue into the discussion. I think that there's a combination of systems and processes, as we've been discussing, that'll maximize the likelihood that you get paid. With a service like NextTrust BillFlash and what we have to offer, when you combine delivering statements to a patient through a means that the patient prefers, like their phone or email or even a mailed statement, with the ability to pay, you're giving them everything that they would potentially need to make the decision, I'm going to pay you. They can see everything that had happened, why they're being billed, but not only do they have the statement there in front of them, but they have the ability to click a button, click a link, and make that payment through your online payment portal if you utilize tools like that. But I think that it's also really easy to get caught up in just saying, I'm going to go buy these tools and then my patients can pay me online. So they're going to actually start doing that. And what we are really finding as we go out to our customers with pay services is that it really requires the practice to rethink how they engage with their patients and communicate with their patients, because the patient isn't just going to go do that because you have it. They need to understand how to get there, how to navigate there. They need to feel secure once they are there. And that all involves changing things like how you check the patient in the practice. Oh, when are you collecting the copays? When are you going to be following up with them? How quickly are you sending them the collections? And are you communicating with them and giving them options prior to the visit that will maximize the likelihood that they pay? If you don't change your processes to start asking those things and giving the patient the ability to make those decisions at earlier points in the process, you won't be nearly as effective at getting them to pay.
That's so true, Tony. You've got to set up that report of findings and let that patient know what their responsibilities are for their portion, 100%, and give them the receipt, the invoice, the statement, however you can communicate them that information. Portals are ideal because a lot of people are at home getting telehealth visits. So that's the quickest way, those statements that BillFlash offers. Wonderful tools that, are all integrated into our program as well.
Yeah, and text to pay. Text to pay is the newest thing. And one of my good friends owns a billing company, and she said her AR went from somewhere around 20% or so to 99.9% paid once she started sending text to patients to pay, because they text the link. Everyone's got a phone in their hand nonstop, to a detriment, unfortunately. And they see it, they click on that link, they make the payment and they move on with their life. So she is a real world example of how that change, subtle change on how you communicate with your patients can go a long way to get paid after the fact. Even if you really should be collecting up front, but if you got to collect after the fact, use the ways that people are communicating and used to interacting now.
Definitely. So we also want to just mention to you too that, you need to be doing these reviews in your practices, revamp those methods, reach out to your vendor program services, your software services, find out what they're offering and make it happen, make it a better year for your business and get that revenue increase. Michael also recommends, that you should be doing reviews of your merchant services. And I know, Michael, you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely review it. Merchant services in the processing world as a whole, very unpredictable. Some good guys, some not so good guys, some very creative people, some very transparent people. So you should definitely review that often. And it doesn't have to be crazy reviews all the time. Easiest way is just to send us statements. You get an independent review, no obligation. We review hundreds of them. And so we'll give you an independent review, see if your processor is being creative. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And provide you with something that can help you out. Another really easy thing that merchants can do every month is just to take their total fees, divide it by the total volume, and that'll give you your overall rate. Just write it down, put it in a spreadsheet. Just do that once a month. Right when you get your statement, just take total fees, divide it by the total volume, you'll get your rate. Do it every month. It should only take a minute or two. And if it ever looks out of place or anything ever looks weird, like one month you paid 2.5%, the next month you paid 3.5%, just ask about it. Ask your processor, ask questions. If they say, yeah, I see that it went up, ask them why it went up. It will probably be a legit reason, but you have to ask. That's really the biggest thing I would tell merchants. It's a really complicated industry. So you really just want to ask as many questions as you can to get as much info as you can. And that's what will separate you, and that's what will make you just better off in your business.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for all this wonderful insight. I do want to let everybody know on the call that at the end of the month, February 25th to be exact, we're hosting a live webinar with BillFlash to really help you overcome those top objectives of why your patients aren't paying, and to really give you some creative ideas. And we'd really love to have you join that webinar. And also reach out to sales@EZClaim.com so we can help you with EZClaim Pay and get that going as a process for you in your practices. And BillFlash as well to Tony and his team for e-statements and sending your statements for you and getting those processes set up to help you increase your revenue. So our webinar is Thursday, February 25th at 1 o'clock. It's up on our website. We really hope that you register for it so we can help offer you those tips for overcoming those payments that patients aren't making. Because to see your statistics on some of the questions that were being sent in, 50% are not paying. We need to find out why and help you overcome that. So great webinar, and we really hope that you'll register for it. Super thanks to our panelists today and speakers. Thank you guys so much for this wonderful insight. And certainly, Tony, if you want to give out your information or email.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Susan. If you need to get in touch with me or the BillFlash people, my email is tonypeterson@nextrust.com, Nextrust, Nextrust. You can also reach out to any of us on our team if you send an email to sales@billflash.com. If you have any questions, any member of our team would be able to take you through and help you through any questions that you might have with the systems or processes that you need to set up in order to make these changes.
Wonderful. And Michael, thank you too for joining us and helping us out. Certainly we'll have everyone email us some statements that are interested, and we'll get those over to Michael and his team for an analysis for you. And we just are so glad that you could join us on this nice podcast discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
I appreciate what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It was a great time, and we're going to go ahead and say goodbye and hope to hear from you, those of you that are listening in and would like to learn more. So with that, we'll go ahead and end it. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Susan.
Yep. Thanks,
Thank
Susan.
you.